Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, April 26th, there with the music of my good friend Carlos Guedes. We get started on another program. Today we'll be rejoined by our good friend Leslie Eastman. You know, every time Leslie comes on, we usually have a great show, and she is also going to be joined today by Lee Everett Mendoza. And we had Terry on the show before when we talked about Mr. Trump. Today we're going to talk about the first 100 days of Trump. Which, believe it or not, I think actually happened have they already happened? I don't remember if it's exactly 100 days. But we're pretty close to it right now. And we're going to look at some of the accomplishments as well as some of the other things that everybody's talking about. I do have a quick post about all of this that will be hopefully available tomorrow morning, where I talk about the 100 days as a very arbitrary marker, that it really doesn't mean anything historically. FDR, I think, is the one who made it famous. But the fact is that for most presidents, the first 100 days don't really tell you much about their presidency. And I bring up the examples of President Obama and President Bush, number 43 and number 44. In April of 2001, President Bush was still trying to find out what kind of a president he was going to be. Was he going to be a domestic president, a compassionate conservative, all the kind of stuff that he used to get elected president? In 2009, President Obama at this time was pretty much walking on water. Who would have believed that 8 years later, 1,000 Democrats would have lost their seats? And who would have believed, of course, that President Bush would have been defined as a war president? So a lot of things happen that have nothing to do with your first 100 days. But I understand a lot of it is a media thing. Sometimes the politicians also create these barometers of 100 days or whatever. But I've never put that much emphasis on it, although I have to say that I do think one great thing has happened in these 100 days, and that's the appointment of Neil Gorsuch. If that's all that President Trump did for his whole year, I would be extremely happy. Let me say hello to our good friend Leslie Eastman, who is always a treat to have you on the show. Leslie, how are you?
Hey, Silvio, happy to be here chatting with you about all the news. And as always, it's been a fairly robust news cycle. And so looking forward to taking a look at the context of reviewing President Trump's past 100 days very much with the always glamorous and witty Terry Lee Everett Mendoza.
Right, and in fact, we're going to say hi to Terry right now. How are you, Terry? Welcome.
Hi, Silvio. Hi, Leslie. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
I was just thinking off the air, Leslie, that we are, because of the magic of technology, able to do this show because of the phone, of course, and we're in 3 different time zones, and here we are, we're doing a show. I think that's really cool. Thanks for technology. What can you say?
Yeah, it's great living in the age of the new media, because without the new media, I don't think we would have had the presidential result that we had. And thank God for the new media as well, because I sense that the elite media is using this 100 days to kind of divide us and try to rip away the Trump supporters' positive feelings toward President Trump. And by us taking a look at all his accomplishments in these past 100 days and our reasonable expectations, I think we're going to do a lot to enhance the efforts of real independent conservative small government movement going forward.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. No, I think you're exactly right on that. Leslie, why don't you sort of review with the audience a little bit? Just tell them a little bit about Terry. I know it's been a few months. I think we spoke, if I remember, right before the inauguration.
Yes.
Of President Trump.
It's hard to believe it was about 100 days ago that we were sitting around remarking about President Trump's inauguration, and Trump has been so busy. It seems like we're cramming in a year's worth of information into the 100-day analysis. Terry is a remarkable woman, very powerful, real estate mogul, but if you have glamour and she's got a house that she's built in ancient Egyptian style, which made her my lifelong friend on Facebook, and she and I connected on Facebook, and I came to discover that she was a founding member of the Trumpettes, a group of very professional, high-power women who were early supporters of President Trump, and moreover, she attends Mar-a-Lago events, sees President Trump and his wife Melania, and I thought, perfect, she's going to be our on-the-ground reporter when it comes to matters dealing with our commander-in-chief. So Terry, how are you doing, and what was your last event where you saw President Trump, and what's it been like around Mar-a-Lago recently?
Thank you, Leslie. It's been interesting. We were actually there a week ago Saturday night, and he and Melania were there. The only change that I think I've told you is that the security is extremely tight, as it should be. He is president now, and there are Secret Service people everywhere, and that's important. But when he's here working. That's what people have to understand. He's not down here on vacation. He's not down here golfing. He's down here working, and he usually has either a cabinet member or, as you know, a head of state with whom he's having very important conferences. So it's been really interesting. It's different for Palm Beach, but we like having him here.
Wonderful. Have you noticed any physical change or anything different, or does he seem still like the high-energy go-getter that you know and love?
He's still extremely high energy. I don't know how he does it. I think he looks terrific. He's lost weight, which I think happens to every president. He's happy when he's here. This is actually his home. And I think he feels more relaxed, and perhaps he can even get more work done here than he does in Washington. I mean, there have been some pretty important things that have happened here. Mm-hmm. China, Japan, and
right.
We like having him here.
Wonderful.
Terry, I have a quick question, Terry. Yeah, I just have a quick question about Mr. Trump, because something that fascinates me about him has nothing to do with politics, but it's just the energy level that he has. I've never seen that in a president. Now, I obviously have never met the presidents, but just from reading about them, for example, President Bush, George W. Bush, used to wake up really early in the morning and be in the office at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then he'd be in bed by 10. But he was sort of an early riser. I don't know much about President Obama's schedule, but in the case of Mr. Trump, it looks like he is early, he is late. I mean, the energy, and he's doing it 7 days a week from what I can tell. This is incredible energy. Is that something you expected, Terry?
Well, having known him for 25 years, I always knew he was a high-energy person, and he would have to be to have obtained the kind of success that he has. But to do this on probably 4 hours sleep, I don't know how he does it, truly. It's almost superhuman. And he's brilliant. That's important, because anybody who can function as he does on 4 hours sleep, and I really think that's just about what he gets every night. To me, he's an enigma. I love it.
Yeah, it is remarkable, Leslie. Yeah, no, I'm not a big sleeper. I mean, I need more than 4, but I usually get by between 6 and 7. That's been my story. But, I mean, when I see the schedule that he keeps, I mean, it's one thing after another, and I understand he's doing meetings late in the office. I mean, it's just remarkable, Leslie, to see someone with that kind of energy.
Yeah, I think I've overheard Sean Hannity mention that it was not uncommon for Donald Trump to give Sean a call midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and that's just who he is. But he's got a lot of work to do still, so I hope he maintains this level, because it's been one action-packed 100 days, and I anticipate that, the next 100 are going to be no less filled. And Terry, we're definitely I'm going to put you in for the 6-month analysis, because I think there's going to be a lot to look at in about another slog of 300 days.
Yeah.
Right, by the time we're done, we're going to have Terry's going to be with us 16 times, right? In his first term. Every 3 months. So put that on your calendar. This is number 2 of 16, I guess. Actually, this would be the first one of 16, because the first one you did, we're not going to count that one, because that was before he was inaugurated. Now, I'm just going to set the table, and then we're going to take a break, and then let's get into more details. But to me, there's 3 things that happened in this first 90 days. Number 1, Gorsuch. Number 2, Syria. Number 3, North Korea. Now, the last 2 are still works in progress. We don't know exactly how that's going to pan out. But Gorsuch is the one that really stands out in my mind, that he was able to do this as quickly as he did, literally within 90 days of his presidency. And if you had said to me, Leslie and Terry, a year ago, when I was not a Trump supporter, everybody knows that, a year ago during the primaries, when I was not supporting him, if you had said to me the first Republican president, that the first thing the Republican president would do in his new term would be to put somebody like Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, I would say, God bless that conservative president. So I say God bless Donald Trump, because he put him in, and I am so delighted by that, Terry.
So am I. I think the man is wonderful. He's brilliant. He's made really constitutionally. He is a constitutional judge, and that's what we need. He's upholding the Constitution, but I also think that he's going to come back and help us with the immigration problem. I think he's brilliant. I love it.
I do too. Leslie, speaking of judges, and hopefully Mr. Gorsuch can help us a little bit on this. A couple of judges from the West Coast have been in the news here lately. One in the last 24 hours, Leslie. What are you people saying in California about this?
I have an update on that. That's William H. Orrick of the U.S. District Court in Northern California. God bless my state. He really decided to block Trump's executive order, which will say that if you're a sanctuary city, you're not entitled to federal funding. And in fact, Jeff Sessions had just issued a warning letter from the Department of Justice informing and warning 9 various regions, including the entire state of California, that their grants were in jeopardy because of their sanctuary status. Well, Judge Orrick basically halted that by a court order, but it turns out that that judge was a bundler for President Obama, who sent about $200,000 worth of donations Obama's way. So we will be relying a lot on the Supreme Court to do the backing of the President Trump's moving forward actual law. As an executive, Trump is obliged to enforce our law. This is what he's doing. If you're unhappy with law, you change the law using Congress. You don't make up law from the bench, which is what Orrick has done. Right. The next thing he should do is figure out if we can get rid of this judge. What's that process called?
I think impeachment, right?
Impeachment, thank you.
Right.
Word escaped me. We need to impeach that judge. And in fact, this one needs to be the first one, because I would assert that there's got to be an issue here that a clever lawyer can find and use to kick him off the bench and send a warning shot, just like Trump did with Syria. Send a Moab of law right directly to the circuit court in California here.
Yeah, I think what Trump needs to do, using your Syria analogy, what he needs to do is he needs to bomb the runways of these judges so they cannot take off with any more opinions. So it's just got to completely make them unoperational so they cannot take off. But I agree with you. I think it's such a contrast. I mean, And it's a sad contrast, I think. You've got Governor Abbott in Texas fully committed to enforcing the law against some of our sanctuary cities. We have a couple of them. But Governor Abbott and the legislature are committed that the law is going to be obeyed. And then you have the case of California, where the whole state, and it's like insane what we're watching. To me, it's insane, Terry.
I know it's insane, and I love California. I also lived there, and most of my friends out there feel like you and Leslie and I do, so I don't run into it too often, but I read it, and I just shake my head. Seriously?
Oh, I know. It is amazing. It is amazing to me because I know, we all love California. Of course, it's a beautiful state. It's such a part of the 20th century. I mean, in many ways, it was the most important state of the 20th century. But what is happening with the politics out there is so crazy, Leslie. I'm counting on you and a few of your friends out there to maybe change things. And I know you're working very hard at it, Leslie.
Yeah, well, what is occurring is that our politicians in Sacramento are running against the will of the people. Most Californians here do not want the sanctuary state status. It puts everybody in jeopardy. Our government just raised our gas taxes, saying, quote unquote, it's going to infrastructure. There are a lot of unhappy Californians here, and I think what we're hopefully planning to do in the next cycle is to target a few of our Assembly and Senate seats to put in a non-Democrat because they are enjoying supermajority status. And when you get supermajority status in the state, you're allowed to run roughshod. So you can kind of liken it to the first 2 years of Obama's term when he had the House, Senate, and the White House to do whatever it is he pleased. And you see how well that turned out. So,
right.
Don't give up on California quite yet. I think 2018 will be a real key for also Trump as well as California, and we will see what the referendum is in 2018.
Right. No, I don't give up at all. I think because I think you're right. I think most of the people out there, like I was saying to somebody from the Hispanic media, from one of the Spanish media, and I was talking about this, and I said that the Democrats, whether you support immigration reform or not, that's not even the issue here. The issue here is sanctuary cities. And the Democrats are making a big mistake, I think, politically, investing themselves in sanctuary cities. You can, as I say, you can support some kind of immigration reform, some kind of legalization. That's one thing. But when you get into sanctuary cities, the disapproval of sanctuary cities, if you look at the polling data, Leslie, and, legal insurrection, you've done a lot of work on this, it's over 50. It's almost between 60 and 70%. So you got to have a lot. When you get into in the 60s, you got to have a lot of Democrats and Republicans feeling the same way, Leslie.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case here. So I have to say, it's going to be, when we're talking about the 100 days and putting this back in the 100 days, you say that Trump's enforcement is maybe not part of his accomplishments, or that's what the press is promoting. They're saying he's failing to give his promises. Well, the trouble is some of these promises require a great deal of undoing of judicial and legislative inanity that's gone on that will take substantially more time. And so as a Trump supporter, I'm not disappointed because I see him working at trying to fulfill his promises, and I will not lay the blame on him when he can't keep them because of William H. Orrick deciding to rewrite the law and to judicially favor the progressive viewpoint on immigration.
No, and that's exactly how I feel. I'm not as tough on President Trump on this 100-day thing. As I said, I am extremely happy with the fact that Gorsuch is in, and let's deal with the other issues. He's got a whole term. This is not a 100-day presidency. We're going to take a little break, ladies, and then when we come back, we'll get into more details about the first 100 days with Leslie and with Terry. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Before we go back to the ladies, I want to say thumbs up to my great friend Ted Cruz here in Texas, who just promoted Leslie, you're going to love this. Terry, you're going to love this. He just promoted a new act, It's called El Chapo Act, where we're going to take money from El Chapo and from some of the other narcos, and that's how we're going to pay for the border. Man, I got to hand it to Ted Cruz. That was brilliant, Leslie.
Yes, that's a point I think's part of it. Part of what the Trump media wants to do at this 100-day point is really undermine Trump's base of support by saying he's not going to go forward with whatever. He will find funding with the wall. The wall will go up in some form or fashion, and it's going to be, again, a process. I didn't see this coming, but great for Ted Cruz, and I think he's likely to be topping the nominee list for the next Supreme Court appointment, which I hear is going to be this summer.
Yes.
And we never know what's going to come next, but Trump has dozens of different ideas lined up, and he's an experimenter. He's not an ideologue. If one doesn't work, it's not the only option on the table. He'll figure out something else to do.
Well, I tell you,
we did see it, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant, and it's billions of dollars, not millions. It's billions of dollars.
Well, take it away, Leslie. Take it away. Let me hand it over to Leslie here.
Well, I figured it would be kind of fun to take a look at some of our favorite aspects of these past 100 days. And really, Trump has a lot of accomplishments, from a obviously developing and healing economy to, as you mentioned, a really great Supreme Court pick. I think the 100 days matter because what this does is since Trump wasn't a politician, it's going to give us a flavor of how he's actually going to behave as a politician. So I put 3 theme areas together, and I thought I'd get Terry's opinion of each of these theme areas, of what her particular favorite aspect of this particular theme was. And you guys like Gorsuch, but my number one favorite aspect these past 100 days is President Trump's epic trolling of the mainstream media, because the mainstream media and elite establishment despise man, and it's evident in every way they cover him. And that he still has the popularity enough to not only win the election again based on the recent polling, but even persuade Hillary supporters, tells you that people are tuning in and figuring out other ways to get information about President Trump. My favorite trolling of the press was when he tweeted that he had been wiretapped by the Obama administration. The American press got hysterical. We heard he was crazy. We heard he was lying. We heard all sorts of stuff. And sure enough, eventually, drip, 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 it turns out that one of his campaign personnel had been targeted in a FISA warrant. And as the story began to develop, it looked like there were Watergate-like aspects to it, where it's very reasonable to assume that Obama administration was tuning into Trump's campaign efforts. So that's my personal favorite trolling of the press. Terry, do you happen to have a good example of Trump's interaction with the media that you particularly enjoyed?
My favorite is what he is doing right this weekend, the Correspondents' White House dinner, the White House Correspondents' dinner this weekend. And instead of attending, he's going to have a rally, and I think that is brilliant, because why should he be subjected to what they're going to do and what they're going to say? Because it's not going to be fun like some of the other ones were, where they have the funny comedians. The Bush one was very funny, even one of Obama's was, but this one is not going to be pretty. And I think he's done a brilliant thing here. He's just not going to go.
That was brilliant too. Let me get that in.
To go.
Let me get it in.
It's making a lot of those people
not
getting to go. Yeah, I love it. So that's my favorite thing that has happened with the press. The press, by the way, are barred from Mar-a-Lago now. They're completely barred.
Oh, that's rich. I did not know that. That is brilliant. Sylvia, did you have something you particularly liked related to the press?
I just love. Actually, I've come to love Sean Spicer. I kind of liked the way he did it. And I thought his very first press conference was brilliant when he came out and he shut down the conference and got angry at the reporter who had moved out, the Martin Luther King, or the allegation that the reporter who said that the bust of Martin Luther King had been replaced or something. And I thought Spicer that day really kind of set the atmosphere, set the table, and said, we're not going to put up with stuff like that. And I think that was a message I wanted to hear, because that was clearly an act of bad faith by that reporter. I cannot believe that he honestly thought that it had been moved. I think it was just an act of bad faith to make Trump look like a racist.
Absolutely.
So that was, for me, that was important with the media, that one, Leslie.
Yeah, no, and I think there's one thing, and I hope Terry passes this on to President Trump should she see him at Mar-a-Lago. He needs to keep his Twitter account. He actually tweeted out yesterday that anybody saying he has no plans going forward with the wall is wrong, and he needs to keep a direct connection to the American people for Twitter, and I sense he's going to do it, but please pass that on, because that direct connection is the best way he can bypass media in addition to the rallies. And to be honest with you, I'm not watching the Correspondents' Dinner. A sensible network will have that rally on TV, because that's what I'll be watching. And if I have to watch it via YouTube Live, I'll watch it via YouTube Live. I will not be, especially after the brutal and awful roasting that was at the previous White House Correspondents' Dinner, that I think inspired President Trump to put his hat in.
I agree, and the great thing about this weekend is that a lot of those people who were supposed to attend that dinner now cannot attend that dinner because they have to cover his rally. So this is why I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was galactic level troll master, par excellence. My second area is that I really like, and I see this consistently because now I've got 100 days of data. Trump has been targeting Obama's legacy projects with the precision of a drone and the power of a Moab. And there are a lot of legacy projects that will take a while to rescind, and Obamacare probably being the most significant of that, because the Congress should have had a plan ready to go before Trump arrived, McConnell had a plan for the nuclear option, and our Army and Navy and Air Force had a plan for dealing with ISIS that's being enacted. That's on them. So my radar has just picked up that Obama has just signed an executive order to take a look and see if we can undo all the national monument shenanigans that Obama signed away millions of acres of federal land that we could no longer use as Americans. And I think Trump is going to work very hard to undo that so they can become a productive part of our country and available for the use, recreation, mining, and economic success of the American people. So, looking back at the past 100 days, is there a particular legacy project of Obama's that you're pleased with the progress, or you would really like to see further, other than Obamacare, Terry?
Well, I like that he's going line by line through the budget and slashing, and that he put a hiring freeze on federal employees. This is really important because the pork in Washington is just insane. And my other thing that I absolutely love is that, as you know, he is forced to take a salary. He cannot not take it. But those first 3 months, which amounted to over $100,000, he just gave back to the government by giving it to the Parks and Recreation Department, which he had to slash the budget on. So I think this was a really good thing that he did.
Perfect. And Sylvia, did you have a favorite legacy project of Obama's that Trump's been working on, again, other than Obamacare?
I would say most of them. I think the one he did today was fabulous about the lands, because that was really, that was an executive grab, to say the least. But I think overall, I'm glad that he's doing this. It's also, I think, a good constitutional lesson for the country and for the kids who are watching, that if you're going to govern by the pen, then your legacy is going to be eliminated by the pen. And so it seems to me that President Trump is not just canceling Obama, but he's also teaching everybody that, hey, we gotta do this by Congress, because that's the only way we can make a legacy permanent. You're not going to make a legacy permanent by doing executive orders, which is what President Obama did. I will say one quick thing. If I had Mr. Trump's ear, and maybe Terry, you can help me with this, but if I had his ear, I would say, Mr. Trump, why don't you consider eliminating the EPA? You can do it by executive order. The fact the EPA was created by executive order by President Nixon in 1971. It was never a department like whatever. So I think the president could actually do away with the EPA, not because I want bad air or dirty water, but because I think the EPA has completely grown out of it's become not what it was supposed to be. It's become nothing but a bureaucracy that kills jobs, Leslie and Terry.
Yeah, it's exceeded its original mandate, and it'll be interesting because, unfortunately, I don't think that's quite true, because the Congress has put forth and promulgated a lot of regulations that have the force of law now. It's going to take a while. It's one of those long-term projects, and the EPA has done some good work. I just reported on the substantial improvements in air and water quality. There's a place for it, but not the way Obama was treating it to do cap and trade and global warming shenanigans. And one of the acts that's been legislated is that the EPA will no longer be able to use the poor science they have as the basis of regulation. So that's been a really wonderful development. Okay, my third and final area, and this Terry will probably like best of all, is Trump has replaced smart power with smart deals, and I also said with a side of kick-ass. Terry, I'm going to let you speak, because I probably know your number one pick as to what this example is. I'll start with mine, which is, negotiating with China and persuading them to go ahead and ship back North Korean coal, because they have a lot of coal they use. They're shipped out the last shipment back to Korea and is now buying American coal, again, to put economic pressure on North Korea to not get crazy. And that's my personal favorite for this new smart deal approach, Trump, which is proving more successful than the smart power approach of Obama. Terry, let me guess, what is your favorite?
My favorite is that he has already had President al-Sisi of Egypt. He has had Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel and King Abdullah of Jordan, whom I personally adore, had all of them here. And they all agree that ISIS has to be exterminated. And with the United States, Israel, Jordan, and Egypt working together, I think it's just a win-win situation. And what about not allowing any of them over here for the last 8 years? I mean, that was just such an insult. So I'm very proud that he did that. I'm really happy that he did that. I want to see a good relationship with Egypt again. Very sad about what happened on Good Friday. But it just enforces the fact that we really have to do something for the safety of us and the world, and this is what he promises. This is one of his promises, and he's working on it.
Absolutely, and I guess he managed to accomplish in 100 days what Obama couldn't accomplish in 3 years by the release of the Egyptian American.
That's right. Absolutely, I love that.
Yeah,
but that would never have happened had he not had Prime Minister al-Sisi here, President al-Sisi
no.
here.
No. I think. Did you catch the clips of El-Sisi? Because I did, and you could just tell. Sisi had a glimmer in his eye. He was smiling. He was relaxed. It seemed to be very highly productive.
And of course, a lot of people don't understand the love and the connection that Leslie and I have to the country of Egypt, but it's important. It's the oldest civilization, and it's probably what all civilizations other than Rome are based on, Rome and Egypt. So, this was really important. This was a biggie to me, and I love that they finally got her back. I love it.
Yes. So that's not Sylvia. Do you happen to have a smart deal moment that you particularly liked in the past 100 days?
Well, Syria, I think, was very good. I really thought that was great. But I will tell you something, just to follow up on what you two ladies were saying. I was talking to Bill Katz, who's a great friend of mine, and he was telling me that he's never seen, and Bill has been around for a long time, and he was working with the CIA when Kennedy was president. So he's been around for a while. And he was telling me that he's never seen so many heads of state come to Washington in so early in the presidency of anybody. And I thought that was very interesting, that that is true. It seems like every day he's got somebody in there in the White House.
Yes.
And, they don't have to come, really. So I think they're coming maybe to figure him out. They're coming maybe to connect with him. And I don't know exactly why they're coming, but they're coming, so they're talking, and they're getting to know the president, which is, I think, good for them, for us, and for the world, Leslie.
Yeah,
I like what Leslie said about the gleam in their eyes, because, yes, if you have watched this, you can see it. The relationships are warm. They're not staged. They're actually warm.
Yeah, they used to say President Bush had a charm offensive. I don't think it can quite compare to Donald Trump's when Donald Trump is on a roll. But beyond that, Trump is flanked by his gracious and lovely wife, who I never met, but I would imagine Melania is just awesome, especially seeing her, her clips and the prayer, and is very respectful, very dignified. But beyond that, Ivanka Trump, poised, high-powered, gracious, and she had her kids do a Sound of Music moment with the Chinese President Xi, which which really warmed their heart, and I think enhanced the diplomatic efforts for us with the Chinese to help deal with North Korea.
Right. Well, I will say one thing about Mrs. Trump, that she has brought elegance back to the First Lady's position. I mean, the elegance of Mrs. Trump is remarkable. I mean, I'm not taking a shot at the others. That's not what I'm trying to do. Don't read this as a shot at Mrs. Obama. That's not what I'm trying to say. But, I mean, clearly she is lovely and elegant. All the First Ladies are beautiful and elegant in their own way. But this one is really something. And when you see these pictures of the president, the first lady, and when they're hosting the president and the first lady of another country. I mean, I don't know if she was born to be a first lady, but she certainly looks the part, Terry. She looks just like one. That's just great. I love it.
She is magnificent, and today is her birthday, so we'd all like to wish Melania a very, very happy birthday, and we're very proud to have her as our First Lady.
She's the answer to a great... Leslie, go ahead, because I wanted to say one more thing.
I will simply point out, which is troubling to me in the press. We see how dynamic it is, and she has done some appearances, but where do you see them? Have you seen a magazine cover with her featured on it? By this time in Obama's presidency, Michelle Obama was on the cover of everything. Now, part of it is, I'm sure, is Melania is more reticent, but I frankly hope that we see a lot more. And Tara, I have a question for you because you're a fashion maven. Do you see a sense of American women adopting a more enhanced style approach, courtesy of Melania's and Ivanka Trump's examples?
I think some of them have. Unfortunately, the young people today have too many other people to idolize, but they need to look to Jacqueline Kennedy and Melania Trump for a style maven, because she's perfection. She wears very simple clothes, and because her body and her face are so exquisite, those simple clothes just are magnificent on her. I love her simplicity because she likes Dolce & Gabbana, and excuse me, I shouldn't be giving an advertisement, but I wear that all the time because they're just well-fitting, simple clothes, and you can't go wrong with that. She also wears American designers.
Right. No, she's lovely. She's lovely. I mean, it's a great couple, and she's absolutely lovely. We will close today, though, with a great trivia question about Mrs. Maybe you know the answer, Leslie. Maybe you know the answer, Terry. But Melania is the answer to a great trivia question. 2 first ladies were born outside of the United States. Obviously, Melania Trump. And the other one is one that it's even difficult to find an image in Google because she was so little known. And that's John Quincy Adams' wife, who was born in London. So those are the 2 first ladies and who were not born in the United States. So it's a great trivia question to close our show today. Did you know that, Leslie? You're always on top of these things.
Yeah, I knew one of the early ones were. I couldn't remember if it was Adams or Monroe. I just spaced it for a second, but right. I had recalled it. But I don't think the one based in London could speak 5 different languages.
No. No, it was a totally different time.
Ran her own business,
Right. No, I mean, very few people knew the First Lady in those days. I mean, the First Lady, obviously, she lived in the White House, but it was a lot less. One thing I wanted to say to Leslie, you mentioned that we're not seeing enough of Mrs. Trump. I think that may change when she actually moves to the White House. But because when she's there all the time, I think it'll be more obvious. I think right now, she, as I understand, she's living in New York and then comes down on weekends. And this is, I think, because of their son, I believe. But anyway, she's a lovely lady, and so are the 2 of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And, you've got 15 more dates with us, Terry, so I hope you remember that.
I will. I'm very honored. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And Leslie, as always, you're absolutely great with your ideas and your guests, and thank you so much for your time. You're absolutely great.
All right. Thank you, Silvio.
And Leslie, very quickly, what is your latest legal insurrection post?
Oh, I've got a couple up, but the one is I'm wearing my science hat on this one. There's been a new study that refutes the settled science that salt causes high blood pressure. Apparently, new research indicates salt actually lowers blood pressure. So much for consensus science and building regulations on top of that. And also just covering the continued insanity in California. So if you live in another state and you feel bad about your state, just to come and read me. But the other thing is, and it deals with Egypt, so it's the last one I'll end on, is Pope Francis is visiting Egypt, and he's nixing a bulletproof vehicle during his stay and tour through Cairo, which is very troubling to me as a Catholic, but also me as an Egyptophile. So I'll be covering his upcoming trip this weekend for Legal Insurrection. So if you want updates, check there, and hopefully there'll be nothing more dramatic than he says something odd when viewing the Sphinx.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I'm looking forward to your post on that. That's very interesting about Pope Francis. Have a wonderful week, Leslie. And again,
you too.
Thank you always for your time. It's always a lot of fun to have you.
hug, Silvio, to you, and a big hug to your audience. Love you guys a lot. Thanks for keeping me going. I thought the past 8 years were crazy. I don't think they're going to handle to what we're going to have for the next 4 with President Trump, but it's going to be good. It's going to be a great ride.
I think so. I think you're exactly right. Goodbye, Leslie. Thank you for your time, and my best to you and your family.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye, Leslie. Well, that's going to do it, folks. Another show with Leslie and another one with Terry. We're going to do more of these, as I say, because the two ladies are just absolutely wonderful. It's raining in Dallas, or it was raining this morning. It's going to be raining this afternoon. So I got to go out this afternoon on some business calls. So I'll be wearing my umbrella and my hat and everything else. Bye-bye, everybody.